Okay, so a very, very warm welcome to everyone on behalf of ScottishChurch College and the University of Warsaw, Poland. I, Dr. Srimoy Guho-Thakurta, Associate Professor of Department of History, ScottishChurch College, extend a very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today for what promises to be a very, very exciting session. Where we will exchange ideas and our thoughts among ourselves. This is a very special moment for us as we are about to embark on the Students' Conference, which has been organized by the Department of History and Political Science and the Peace Studies Cell of ScottishChurch College, India, in collaboration with the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies, University of Warsaw, Poland. This is a very, very special moment for us because in this particular students' conference, as the name suggests, the entire spotlight would be on those who are most important to us teachers, that is our students. And nothing can be more exciting and nothing else can make us more proud as teachers. So we are now on the verge of beginning what we have titled as Ananta Kumar Sarkar and Sneholata Sarkar Memorial Students Conference on the theme Peace and World Politics, Changing Dynamics. Before I proceed with the inaugural session, and I request our principal ma'am to deliver the welcome address, I would like to mention a certain very special individual without whom this entire event would not have been possible. Professor Annapurna Sarkar, who is an alumni of this college and who is also a former professor of physics of Bethune College, Kolkata. It is her generosity, actually, which has enabled us to organize this event at this scale, in fact. And further, it was her commitment towards the concept and the idea and the practice of peace that inspired us to choose today's conference's theme, which is, as I said, Peace and World Politics, Changing Dynamics. Now let's start with the inaugural session so that we can control the time. And I will now request Dr. Madhumanjari Mandal, our principal, that is of ScottishChurch College, India, to deliver the welcome address. Ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, Srimoy. Good afternoon. Dzień dobry. Mr. Tomasz Lukaszuk, former ambassador of Poland in India. Alexandra Jaskulska, coordinator of the collaboration between ScottishChurch College and Warsaw University. The faculty members of University of Warsaw. Barbara Kratiuk, Anna Rubel, Karina Anzapska, Dr. Supratim Dash, Vice Principal, ScottishChurch College, Dr. Srimoy Guho-Thakurta, Coordinator of this collaboration from ScottishChurch College and Head of the Department of History, ScottishChurch College, Dr. Shushmita Gonsalves, Head of the Department of Political Science in ScottishChurch College, Dr. Riddhi Bhattacharya, Study Cell in our college, Dr. Shamrat Bhattacharya, Internal Quality Assurance Cell, ScottishChurch College, Dr. Annapurna Sarkar, an alumnus of our college, who has donated an endowment in the name of her parents, Ananta Kumar Sarkar and Sneholata Sarkar, to promote peace studies in ScottishChurch College. My respected colleagues, the presenters, namely Jan Gregazik, Emilia Sazdak, Jakub Greta, and Jakub Widzuk from University of Warsaw, and Sayantan Chalki, Manik Bhattacharya, Oyun Dotto, and Shapnil Bishas from ScottishChurch College. The ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of ScottishChurch College family, I welcome you all today. This event can be treated as a unique event which has been possible to take place today after much planning and dialogue between the two institutions. The topic of this seminar is Peace and World Politics in Changing Dynamics, which is well thought topic. And I guess the presenters are quite excited to convey their messages across the countries and all over the world. I'm really grateful to the coordinators from both the institutions for organizing such an event. It will be highly appreciated if we could continue this sort of interaction in future also. I wish all the best to the presenters or speakers and the organizers. May God bless us all. Thank you. Dziękuję bardzo.
Thank you, Dr. Mandal. And we would also like to show our gratitude to you for your consistent assistance in organizing this particular program. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, as we move forward with the inauguration, this is the second activity actually that we are conducting as part of the MOU between the two institutes. And as I said, this is a very special one because this is all about the students who really matter to us. Thus, in order to introduce the conference a bit and to talk about it, I would first like to invite and extend again a very warm welcome from India to Mr. Tomasz, the former ambassador of Poland to India. Sir, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, good morning, namaskar. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Madhumanjari Mandal, Principal, Scottish Church College, Dr. Supratim Das, my colleagues Alexandra, Karina, Anna and Barbara. This great honor and great pleasure to be with you today. I was privileged to be in Kolkata and to visit Kolkata many times, and the topic of the students' conference also is very close to my heart, not only due to the fact that I serve as a diplomat for 25 years, and the peace is actually something which is in the center of diplomacy. But also the fact that India as a country and all the spiritual life of India is actually also devoted to maintain the peace. And as I had also privilege to witness it from very close for the 3 years of my career, I can tell you that actually, yes, peace is something which also you can find in every document of the Ministry of External Affairs or any other documents of the government of the Republic of India. For us, the peace in Poland, as you know, is also a very important moment. And I'm glad that the students will discuss, and I'm almost sure that the students from India and the students from Poland will find a common language about speaking about world peace, about speaking about the crisis of democracy and all the developments going on now in all the corners of the world, including Europe. As you know, we had yesterday the very important speech of President Biden, and the peace also was mentioned. The peace was mentioned and the solidarity was mentioned. Solidarity is important, and I think this solidarity between you and us also contribute to the peace, and also to avoiding the conflicts which are now, on our minds. And I would like to say that I'm very glad that this cooperation, as Dr. Madhumanjari said, is just at the level of students, And I would like once again congratulate you on the occasion of this conference and wish you a very interesting debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tomasz, for laying down the foundations for the conference. It's a real honor to have you here. And I hope that you can stay with us till the end and listen to some of the discussions that are being made among the students. Thank you so much again. Now I would like to request our Vice Principal, Dr. Supratim Das, to give his perspective on the conference from our end. Sir.
Thank you, Srimoy. A very good afternoon. Once again, I would like to welcome my colleagues from Poland, Warsaw, and my colleagues from India, from Kolkata. To my mind, the theme, the very particular theme of today's students' conference is extremely pertinent. And as time is very short, I would like to say just a few words on the notion of sustaining peace that really we need today. In the global scenario today, the international community really needs sustaining peace in the world. Now, sustaining peace seeks to reclaim peace in its own right. Let me quickly refer to a few points. First, sustaining peace can be described as an explicit and deliberate policy objective for all states, regardless of whether they are plagued by violent conflict. It is supported by an infrastructure composed of institutions, norms, attitudes, and capacities covering different sectors and levels of social organization. This infrastructure needs to be constantly updated to changing contexts, dynamics, and circumstances. Very relevant to today's theme. Now, secondly, we may argue that sustaining peace applies to all societies and is not necessarily confined to unstable environments or designed to calm the ravages of violent conflicts. It is an ongoing process that is the shared responsibility of states and all citizens. Naturally, this begs the question, how do we sustain peace in practice? One could, of course, assume that peace is an automatic outcome for states that have inclusive, transparent, and accountable institutions, fair legal frameworks, inclusive economic policies, and a culture of tolerance. But we are actually lacking to some extent, to a large extent, in many of these areas. A final point that needs to be addressed then is the role of the international community. Bilateral and multilateral institutions have committed billions of dollars to peacemaking, peacekeeping, and other crisis management activities around the world. Sustaining peace constitutes a paradigm shift, to my mind, in how we think about peace and how we address the idea of conflict. As a process and as a goal, building sustainable peace is not the burden of outsiders. Even under the most urgent circumstances, external interventions should endeavor to build on what people know and what they have. Societies that have developed national infrastructures for peace offer valuable lessons for this eminently internal enterprise. This is where I think India is also very much relevant. More needs to be done to show up the concept at the national and global levels. I'd stop here and I wish this students' conference a very big success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your encouraging words and again, laying down the foundations for what is to come. Now, as this particular conference is focusing on a very pertinent theme, which is peace, and we have our reasons to choose it, I would now like to welcome Dr. Riddhi Bhattacharya, Faculty Department of History, Scottish Church College, and the coordinator of the recently constituted the Peace Studies Cell of Scottish Church College, to introduce this particular theme to the audience and to the students present.
Good morning to my colleagues, friends, and students from Poland. Good afternoon to my colleagues, friends, and students from India. I welcome you all to Anantakumar Sarkar and Sneholata Sarkar Memorial Students Conference on Peace and World Politics, Changing Dynamics. Peace is a loaded and often confused term in international relations. The concept of peace is often used to refer to what Plato would have described as an ideal form, or to depict a minimalist, realist, and liberal version, which there is an absence of overt violence, particularly between or within states. The establishment of the discipline of international relations was intended to help elucidate the causes of war and the perquisites of attainment of peace. But Aya's orthodoxy has been that peace is an unobtainable ideal form at worst and limited balance of power at best. The focus on peace as simply the antonym of war is perhaps the reason why the concept of peace is rarely disaggregated or represented in plural forms in mainstream IR studies. Peace is rarely conceptualized even by those who often allude to it. Not only has it rarely been addressed in detail, but also theorization of peace in IR is often hidden away in debates about war and conflict and the like. The studies often present peace as an ideal form, worth striving for or trying to achieve at best. A historical narrative of peace is fraught with difficulty, and orthodox approaches of IR are forced to retreat behind rational problem-solving approaches rooted in specific context, which are then projected globally on the basis of claimed universalism. As a consequence, the assumption goes that first the management of war must be achieved before the institution of peace can operate at a global, local, and regional level. But the silver lining in all this is that more recent contributions from critically inclined IR theorists have begun to open up a more nuanced and complex understanding of peace. And for this, we are considering keeping peace in the mainstream of IR. These new IR theorists are now drawing on the work of Marx, Gramsci, Foucault, and Habermas, among others. They have also focused on the problems related to the role of the international political economy, global justice, hegemony and domination, culture and identity. Communication, representation, and exchange have been included for understanding peace as a central concept of IR. Through this students' conference, I sincerely hope that we will strive towards a more nuanced and complex view of peace and world politics. Conference offers a wide array of topics, from crisis of world peace to analyzing the role of United Nations, from territorial disputes to Ukraine war, and from vision of a powerful Korea, peaceful Korea, to Buddhist propaganda of peace. I believe our students, through their presentations, will show us new dimensions and views to address the problems of peace and its reflection on world politics. Students, I wish you all the very best, and we are all eagerly waiting to hear from you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bhattacharya. Now, as we are done with the inaugural session, that is, and we are into the technical session that matters the most, that is where the students speak. Now, as arranged between the coordinators, that is us and the University of Warsaw, This session will be chaired by the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies, University of Warsaw. I would now request Dr. Alexandra Waskolowski to kindly take over from me and to initiate the technical session. Before I leave the mic to her, a big thank you to her as well for also being there consistently in order to organize this program in the way that we are being able to do that. Dr. Alexandra, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ramoni. I would like to underline it's a great pleasure, and I see it as a privilege that we cooperate with ScottishChurch College and that we're able to organize such an amazing event. So I would like to welcome from our side one more time all people engaged in the conference, but with not further delay from my side, I would like to start the session as we are so eager waiting to hear our students. So each one of you will gonna have around 6 minutes to present your research, and like to invite now the first student, Jakub Greta, who is a student of the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies, University of Warsaw. And he will present a paper on the crisis of world peace in the 21st century. Jakub, please, the floor is yours.
Welcome, everyone. I'm glad I can take part in this conference. So my name is Jakub Greta, and I am a student of Faculty of Political Science and International Studies at the University of Warsaw. I'm also a member of a student association of Pacific Area States, and I would like to talk about crisis of a world peace we are experiencing right now. As we know, a year ago, Russian Federation started a full-scale invasion against Ukraine. Suddenly, whole Europe and whole world learned that situation established after World War II and the end of the Cold War is going to change. A lot of people, especially young people, were living their lives at atmosphere of peace. Western societies after Cold War ended, and the crash of the Soviet Union used to think that the era of big conflicts in Europe have ended. Peace became not one of possibilities for us, but one and only option. Of course, it will be great if that state will continue in future, but we must face reality. A reality that shows us again that peace is not given for us once and for all, and we must constantly work on it. Peace is not temporary, and at February of 2002, our view have changed. Our world have changed with it. The situation we are dealing with is dangerous without any question. We are facing a change of discourse at global politics and global peace situation. Fundamentals that were established after end of a Cold War are going to change, and we must put new fundamentals to the new system of peace on the world. But every crisis is also an opportunity, and this specific crisis will be an opportunity to new political members and new political players. We can see how much NATO redefined itself because of a Russian invasion. A lot of NATO members redefined and reshaped their military politics and security politics. A lot of doing that NATO started because of this war will in the future cause the key role of a NATO in putting a new fundamentals to a world peace system. On the other hand, we can see what is happening on the East. Republic of China became a big political force that can shape not only policy at the region, but also a international politics. We see that Russian Federation is cooperating with China in some grounds like economic policies, and they are exchanging resources. But important fact is that Russia became more dependent from China, and in future Russia will be even more independent from China. Nowadays, Beijing has a big influence in case of Russia, and we can see a lot of decisions and a lot of doings at Moscow must consider China view. Another player who will be important in future, but also was important in past, is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, because of its resources, especially energetic resources. Now we have energy crisis in Europe, and it soon can be an energy crisis in the world. And countries that have these resources will be very, very important in the future. And we will see that constantly in international policy. We can see that even now, countries like USA and countries like China are both interested in cooperating and holding good relations with countries like Saudi Arabia. So this is just a few examples, but as we can see, course of actions in the future will be different. Current situation will reshape a whole system of global peace. A lot of political powers will emerge in the future, and new players will show up. We can see a lot of signs that after a war, we will have to deal with completely new situation. Without even considering how this war will end, our reality will change, and we must face it. War is just a period of transition. After it, not only Europe, but the whole world will have to consider new political scene and new international situation. Current situation should be an important lesson for all of us. A lesson that says that peace is not temporary, and if you want to keep it, we should constantly cooperate for prolonging it. International cooperation, diplomacy, and integration policies are tools to keep peace going and to establish another era of peace in the future. And that fact is very important for everyone on the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jakub, for a very interesting presentation. What I strongly believe in, yes, that's very true, that the Russian invasion of Ukraine definitely changed the balance of power and also approach how we treat peace. But what I see also very interesting, that from our Western perspective, we thought that we managed to achieve this peace constantly, yeah, as you said. But when we look at from the perspective, for example, from Asia, South Asia, or Southeast even Asia, East Asia, we will definitely see that the conflict is still there, and the peace as in Europe, as we thought, as it was established in Europe, never happened. So I would say that now we are more in the similar situation in Europe and in Asia than before. But it's just a quick comment. Thank you so much for your presentation. I strongly believe that the presentation presented by Jakub, Greta, it's wonderfully linked with the second presentation of the day. And the second presentation will be given by Sayantan Chalki, a student of Department of History at ScottishChurch College, on the topic of relativity of peace. I need to admit that I'm really looking forward to listen to your presentation. Please, Sayantan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, ma'am. Just could you give me a minute to just share my screen?
Of course, yes, please. Okay, now we can see it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is there a chance you could, oh yeah, now it's a full screen. Okay, wonderful, thank you. So the floor is yours.
Okay. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. To all the dignitaries present, Principal Ma'am of Scottish Church College, Mr. Tomasz, Lukaszuk, former Ambassador of Poland to India, Dr. Supratim, the Vice Principal of Scottish Church College, and the chairs of today's presentations, the faculty members of Political Science and International Studies. My topic for today is the relativity of peace, right? The previous speaker talked about how we should have new fundamentals and how it is an opportunity for new political players to enter the international forum and expand the scope and international order of peace. But for that, I believe that we first need to understand what peace in international order currently is and what are its shortcomings. And therefore, I've chosen this topic, the relativity of peace. Moving on, if you can see your screen, there is a picture, right? At a first glance, some of you will see a man staring forward or a man staring sideways, right? So there are two different ways of looking at the same picture. This is the way I look at peace. It is relative in nature. It is derived from different cultures, different ideologies, and different political scenarios and applied into the foreign policies of such countries, right? So there is, for me, there is no static or a static definition of peace or a static international order of peace in, let's say, international relation. So I'm here to argue that there are the different concepts of peace from different parts of the world. For example, I have identified there is a Western idea of peace, there is a Middle Eastern idea of peace, and there is an Eastern idea of peace, right? So let's move on to the Western idea of peace, which according to me is the most dominant discourse, both in academic world and in the practical application of international relations. Moving on. Okay. To understand the origin of Western peace, we must understand a very key component of Western philosophy, which says that human beings are inherently in a state of war. And from this originated the concept of Greek and Roman peace. For example, the Greek word Irene interprets the state of peace secured by a certain agreements or a treaty, and the Roman word pax, which stands for peace, can be interpreted as a state of affairs. So therefore, in layman's term, we can conclude that the origin of peace is actually the idea of peace. The idea of peace is an absence of war, right? Secured by certain treaties and agreements between the conflicting sides. And I believe this is the basis for the origin of the Western peace, right? Now, absence of war has been historically accepted as the popular idea of peace. My popular examples will be, let's say, the Treaty of Vienna in 1815, which brought an end to the Napoleonic Wars, right? And it was said that peace was secure in Europe. Or the Treaty of Versailles after the First World War, and it was said that peace was secure in Europe yet again. So this absence of war is what the Western nations defines as peace, right? Now, even though, let us move on to some of the features, and then I'll do a critical analysis of these features. Now, Western philosophy views a peacemaker as someone who negotiates from a position of strength, right? Imposing their, let's say the Treaty of Versailles, right? It was negotiated from a position of strength by the victors, imposed on the weaker nations or the losers, right, to cripple their opponents. The treaty that is imposed on by the victor country or the more powerful nation, by the victor nation on the weaker nation makes it a treaty of unequals, right? Therefore, the peacemaker is someone who is seen as a negotiator from a position of strength. Now, this one might argue that this has been a historical perspective. It is not applicable in modern times, but I would just like to disagree with that and say, let's look at the current scenario, right? Who drives world politics today? The Western world, particularly United States. I heard the previous speaker mention about Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, but I did not hear the previous speaker mention the name of United States of America. According to me, who is the most like the instigator of all the conflicts? Not all, I'm sorry, most of the conflicts in this world. The reason being that for US's interventionist policies, right? This is the reason, and this is derived from the fact that it is more economically and militarily powerful. So, so what we need to understand is that this absence of war theory of Western peace, which is imposed by the more powerful nations, is a very hollow concept, right? Because when you say the absence of war is peace achieved, we are conveniently ignoring certain parts. Let's say supplying arms to the rest of the world for fighting proxy war. So is that peace, that component of order being mentioned anywhere in Western foreign policy? So this is my critique.
Sayantan, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but you have around 1 minute left, yeah? And then your time will be over, okay?
Oh,
you
okay.
had 6 minutes, all right? So please try to go to conclusions. Thank you.
Okay, okay, fine. Moving on to the origins of Middle Eastern peace. Like, let's say, for the example, the Western peace is originated from our philosophy, from a political order, but Middle Eastern peace is originates from a religious idea, right? When God wills is followed, peace is secured. Now, since I have less time left and I don't want to delve into the religious matter of this, I would just like to highlight one key difference between the Middle Eastern peace and the Western peace. Middle Eastern peace necessarily do not mean an absence of war, right? And they do not claim that. In fact, sometimes going to war, like let's say the Christian crusade, is justified as a means of securing peace because it is the following the will of the God, right? So what we must understand here is Middle Eastern peace is direct, straightforward, right? There is no strings attached. They say, they do what they say. But Western idea of peace is something I believe is a little hypocritical and a little bit, a little bit diplomatic, right? I'll not say any other negative term. This is the concept of Middle Eastern peace. Now let's look at the India, for example, my country, India. If we talk about Eastern countries, in India, peace is derived from, again, from a philosophical background which refers to Shanti, right? It is essentially not in political order per se, but it has been adapted, and we can see that how it has been adapted in modern sense. We have a very non-interventionist policies. We are not an aggressor in most of the conflicts. We protect our own national interests, right? And we are not the aggressor. So this is what Eastern or Indian philosophy derives, right? The idea of peace. Now, what since I have very little time left, and I just want to come to the conclusion that if today we are discussing peace and we are looking forward to coming into a consensus about what peace really stands for and how we should, like, how the international order must be like reshuffled, we must understand the different ideas and we must respect the different viewpoints of peace and give an equitable opportunity to other countries to have their foreign policy in an international forum. One might argue that in like, let's say, since we have international forums like, let's say, the United States of America, the United Nations, we have a place for diplomacy. There is an equitable discussion, but here also we see certain features like the veto powers, right? Again, coming back to my point, imposition by the more powerful nation on the weaker nation, that remains a key component in international relations which we must address, and we can achieve peace then. I would like to end my speech by citing a very controversial example, and I hope that it is not taken in any other way since we are all academics here. I would like to talk about the sign swastika, right? In India, it is interpreted as a sign of prosperity and wisdom because of a religious background, right? But in Europe, it is a symbol of hate. But both the interpretation of the same component is justified, has historical context, and must be understood and respected. And this is exactly my point. And we should, and I believe that the further speakers from both the University of Warsaw and my college will speak on this on details, and we might arrive in a consensus. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sayantan, congratulations on the great speech. My apologies, I had to interrupt. I really like the idea you presented. Definitely, I could not agree more that you know, peace is relative in nature. I totally agree. So thank you so much for pointing that out. I really believe that your presentation could be turned into a great paper on the nature of peace and relativity of peace. Thank you so much one more time. And now after this, I would say, we may say that the two first papers were some kind of the introduction to the session, great two papers. And now we'll go to specific case studies. So the first case study will be presented by Mainak Bhattacharya, a student from Department of History, ScottishChurch College, and the title, Unsuccessful, Unconvincing, Undeterred, Critical, Analyzing the United Nations. So please, the floor is yours.
Yes, ma'am. Just let me share my screen first.
Yes, please.
Of course.
Share my share.
Okay, so the screens are visible. If you could also make it full screen, that will be perfect. Wonderful. So now I give one more time floor to you. Please present your paper.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible? Okay, so without further ado, I'll start. We, the people of the United Nations, are determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. The United Nations was formed after World War II for maintaining world peace and stability. It has been touted as a global forum where every voice is heard. While visible efforts have been taken by organizations such as the UNICEF and the WHO for furthering humanitarian objectives, many have dubbed it as a failed institution. For my presentation, I have divided it into the structural problems and the various deeper questions. So without further ado, let's just start with the General Assembly. It is a global parliament consisting of all the 193 member states with the concept of one nation, one vote, which essentially means that countries as small as Liechtenstein on the one hand and as big as China on the other hand have the same vote. It can host regular, special, and emergency special sessions. Representatives of member states establish their stances on matters of international concern and pass resolutions. But critics have often called the General Assembly a talking shop because it can only issue recommendations or express dissension. Coupled with it is the fact that it is legally meaningless and a binding resolution would have to pass through the United Nations Security Council. A testament to the inefficacy of the General Assembly is the fact that it took a 3-hour-long informal session to decide that a special session would be held after 400,000 people died in Syria. I was going through the archives between 2011 and 2016, and in the resolution briefs, I found the same sentence: condemns violence in Syria. There were no special sessions on the Rwandan and Sudanese genocides. It was even used as a battering ram by the United States of America in 1950 when the Unity for Peace resolution was passed, which vested residuary powers in the General Assembly in case of a deadlock in the Security Council. The USA was thus able to send peacekeeping troops in the Korean War. The executive body of the United Nations is, in effect, the Security Council. It consists of 5 permanent members and 10 rotating non-permanent members. The permanent members possess the power of a negative vote or a veto power, whereby they can discard a resolution which they do not agree with. Article 27 of the UN Charter inadvertently recognizes veto power in matters of peace, conflict resolution, sanctions, and entry of new members. The little known fact is that non-permanent members also possess a sort of veto power which is known as block veto. If they unitedly vote against a resolution, then the permanent members of the P5 nations have to reach a compromise. Veto power is apparently used for global stability, but the United States has used vetoes against sanctions on Israel. The United States has again used vetoes against the recognition of the Rwandan genocide. Russia has used its veto 121 times, including in defense of the Syrian regime. The main problem which lie with the Security Council is the fact that the constitution of the P5 countries does not reflect the present global shift of power and is still stuck in World War II nostalgia. There is also the question of legitimacy versus efficacy. The veto power, which is seen as unethical, legitimizes the effectiveness of the Security Council. So that is a paradox in itself. Article 5 provides a paradoxical method of removal of permanent states, whereby they have to agree to a resolution for their removal. For effecting peace in conflict-ridden regions, the United Nations has the UN peacekeeping forces. The UN peacekeeping forces have often suffered from confusing mandates, ranging from observation and protection to active intervention. During the Rwanda genocide in 1994, the peacekeeping forces were tasked only with protecting foreigners. Due to moral obligations, soldiers had to intervene. Interestingly, this was used as a tool for diplomacy in the transfer of civilians to UN safe zones through extremely hostile territories. The greater problem is that there is often a cultural gap between the forces and the local people, in spite of official training received. This manifested itself in the form of tensions with locals in the Congo and a variety of sexual assault allegations. Another factor to consider is the legal immunity the forces possess, making them subject to trial only by contributing nations. All of this raises the question, is the UN's path toward peace sustainable? The Oxford Union debate of 2016 on the topic, the UN is a failing institution, raised more questions than providing answers. The concept of international democracy is paradoxical because many states themselves are not democratic. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia kept its seat in the UN Human Rights Council till 2020. Iran was a member of the UN Commission on the Status of Women till last year, and we know that aged very well. Along with this, region-specific interests find center stage as opposed to global challenges. Is the onus then on the member states themselves or the structure of the UN with its lack of membership criteria? Matters further complicate when the issue of reforms is raised. The African Union, in as far back as 2005, drafted the Ezulwini Consensus, reaching an agreement that 2 permanent UNSC seats must be granted to African nations. In 2013, France proposed the practice of voluntary restraint or collective limitations on veto power by P5 nations in cases of mass atrocity. Voted by 100 countries, but later stalled. Recently, Liechtenstein has proposed a veto review by the General Assembly, which is non-binding on P5 nations. The G4 nations, Brazil, Germany, Japan, and India have all vied for a permanent seat in the UN Security Council. All these indicate that the underlying notion of the West versus the rest needs to change. The Polish Institute of International Affairs has proposed the drafting of a resolution outlining key objectives and the creation of a uniform communicating platform connecting various subsidiary organizations tasked with the realization of those objectives. Moreover, I believe that the internal auditing and investigating mechanism is flawed. The United Nations Office of Internal Oversight Services, or the UNOIOS, has a vacancy rate of 27%, and its website keeps evaluation reports only for 30 days. In a 2008 New York Times article, a former UNOIOS investigator claimed his reports on abuses by peacekeepers in the Congo was whitewashed. This makes a strong case for the need of internal investigations independent of UN bureaucracy.
Mainak, you have 2 minutes, okay? You have 2 minutes left, all right? 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am, I'm just wrapping up my
Thank you.
arguments.
2 minutes, okay. Please continue.
Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think the UN is an effective organ. I don't think that the UN should not exist. I think that the UN in its current state has not realized its full potential. It needs to be reactive rather than proactive. And I would like to end my speech on an optimistic note by saying that if the United Nations was not here, we would have been trying to invent something like it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mainak, for presenting your paper. I would say that you delivered, I believe, this what we were expecting, judging by the title of your presentation. So thank you so much for pointing that out, the areas in which UN is unsuccessful, unconvincing, undeterred, but also I appreciate that you mentioned that still it is an important actor in international relations. But of course, I agree that UN as an organization and its structure can be definitely improved. So now I would like to give floor to my dear colleague, Dr. Anna Wróbel from the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies. Oh, I'm very sorry, to Karina Jędrzejowska. My apologies, I made a mistake. I'm very sorry. To Dr. Karina Jędrzejowska, my colleague from Faculty of Political Science and International Studies. Karina, the same like me and my other colleagues present here, had a pleasure to be to Calcutta and to India many times. And before I will give floor to Karina, Dr. Karina, I would like to thank you also at the Student Association of Pacific Area Studies, which is a student association at the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies. Why I wanted to tell now about it, because the next speaker, Jakub, is the president of the association, and I have a pleasure to be academic supervisor. Definitely without them, this conference will be not possible from our side. So thank you so much. And now I give a floor to Dr. Karina Jędrzejowska. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, everyone, both in Calcutta and Warsaw, to make this conference possible. And well, it's a great pleasure and honor to participate in this event, especially listening to students, our next generation of scholars. And it's my pleasure now to introduce two case studies that actually move us towards Indo-Pacific affairs. First, as Alexandra already indicated, we have a student of Faculty of Political Science and International Studies of University of Warsaw, simultaneously president of Student Association of Pacific Area States, as Alexandra kindly noted. So without further ado, I give floor to Jakub, who will present the story of territorial disputes as a threat to peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific region. Jakub, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me say that it is with great pleasure and honor that I speak to you today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is undeniable that in recent years, the importance of the Indo-Pacific region has been significantly elevated. American administration making a strategic pivot to Asia, China's growing influence, both political and economic, Japan's remilitarization, the demographic boom of India, and economic development of the Asian countries. All these factors have been accelerating the phenomenon of the center of gravity of contemporary international relations, moving towards Asia and the Pacific. However, while becoming so significant for the global politics, the Indo-Pacific still remains one of the least stable areas of the world, despite no regular armed conflict being waged at the moment. One of the signs of this instability are numerous territorial disputes between states of the region. And today in my speech, I would like to focus specifically on these disputes and demonstrate why they constitute such a serious threat to regional peace and stability. Firstly, it is crucial to underline the fact that the Indo-Pacific is characterized by low institutionalization. The security architecture is based primarily on bilateral alliances, such as the American-Japanese or the American-Filipino partnerships, or unilateral means of ensuring security, exemplified, for instance, by North Korean activity. On the one hand, Indo-Pacific lacks a pan-regional alliance or a collective security system, and on the other, there is no universal integration organization which could introduce political and economic interdependence between the countries. Hence, it can be quite challenging for the states to comprehensively resolve or extinguish the territorial disputes by institutional means. Simultaneously, one can call into doubt the effectiveness of international and global mechanisms of conflict solving, given that, for instance, China will not abide by the rulings of the Permanent Court of Arbitration in Hague, which in 2016 rejected PRC's claims in the South China Sea as having no basis in international law whatsoever. Moreover, in the world of progressive resource scarcity, states seek additional sources of gas, petroleum, or raw materials to fuel their growing economies. One of the main reasons why regional powers such as Japan and China, but as well countries like Taiwan or Vietnam, pursue for control over disputed areas of the South China Sea or the East China Sea is the abundance of resources in those areas. For example, it is estimated that the South China Sea hides 11 billion barrels of untapped oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, not mentioning the large surfaces of fisheries. The economies of the Asia-Pacific countries are in constant need of access to energy sources, and states will engage in all sorts of various and different actions, from the use of force to building artificial islands in order to seize control over these natural resources. As it has already been stated, the region lacks adequate institutional means to solve the disputes. Nonetheless, at the same time, these territorial disputes of the Indo-Pacific region can jeopardize regional peace because states themselves are unwilling to give up their claims towards the disputed areas, as can be seen in the Russo-Japanese dispute of the Kuril Islands. Giving up their claims would not be beneficial for the countries, not only from the economic viewpoint, but at the same time would also undermine their position and reputation on the international arena, while having negative consequences, potential consequences for the government and the ruling party inside the state. Antagonizing relations with other states plays a paramount role in both in internal and external affairs, helping on the one hand to gather allies internationally, and on the other hand to mobilize the population inside the country. And incorporating territorial disputes into politics has been implemented as a strategy, as a political strategy by multiple Asia-Pacific countries, including China. In addition, looking at this issue from the realist perspective, the disputes over maritime and land territories of the Indo-Pacific are an expression of the continuous rivalry between actors of the region who want to constantly accumulate power and attain an advantage over their opponents. Archipelagos such as the Senkaku, Supratim, or Paracel Islands are strategically located, and having them under a state's governance allows it to inter alia control local trade and maritime routes, as well as to increase their ability to project power in the region, which in turn situates the state advantageously in the regional order. All in all, in order to conclude my presentation, I would like to underline that although currently there is no armed conflict fought over any disputed territory in the Indo-Pacific, it is highly essential not to underestimate the threat to peace and stability of the region that they carry with themselves. History has proven multiple times in the last centuries that greed for resources, quest for power, and lack of effective conflict-solving institutions can substantially contribute to a non-violent dispute, igniting into a full-scale armed conflict. And in my opinion, that is exactly what we should bear in mind when looking at the territorial disputes of the Indo-Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Jakub. Congratulations both on great presentation and spectacular time discipline, which given the topic was really an achievement. I really liked the way you presented the maybe not controversies, but the current challenges regarding the conceptualization of Indo-Pacific, which is the region very, let's say, scientifically, academically close to many of us here. And I hope that what you started with the presentation here would turn into more structured academic paper, which I really intend to read at some point. And right now, let's move to another topic that actually is closely related to what Jakub talked about. Let me give floor now to student of Department of Political Science, Scottish Church College, Ayun Dutta, who will talk about peace and hegemony, India in South Asia. So let's move to India. Ayun, the floor is yours.
So is the full screen visible? Yes. So good morning to the honorable dignitaries, professors, faculty, and friends. Did you know that even Vladimir Putin wants peace? He does. He wants peace on the condition and on the terms that Ukraine won't join NATO, the Donbass will belong to Russia, there won't be a Ukrainian nation state, and so on and so on. Basically, peace is a fundamentally fuzzy concept. So every nation tries to shape the terms and conditions of peace in accordance with their perception of their national interest. For this specific reason, practical proposals of peace and the reality of peace get rejected. So in the Indian context of maintaining peace, the strategic thought of Indian ancient thinker Kautilya become very important. So basically, just for a short primer, Kautilya was the prime minister or the kingmaker of Chandragupta Maurya, who was the first unifier of a united India. You know, the Vishnu Purana says proudly that Uttaram yatta samudrasya himadresha chaiva dakshinam varsham tata bharatam nama bharati yatra santati. That is, the land between the Himalayas and the seas is to be known as Bharat, and its people are to be known as Bharati. The objective of a state in South Asia, in the South Asian context, is to hegemonize South Asia. Why now? Why suddenly the need for hegemony? Primarily because let me switch over to the next slide. There's a brief technical difficulty. Please bear with us. It's not working. Yeah, so Kautilya fundamentally believes in peace. I'm sorry for the interruption. I will now continue. So Kautilya fundamentally believes in a policy of peace by outlining a policy of sandhi. That is, a state can accept peace on the terms of the hegemon, that is a rival power who has arisen in power and status and is likely to remain at that position for the foreseeable future. However, any aspiring hegemon, which is the Bharatiya state, whom he calls the Vijigishu, should not accept this type of peace. Why? Because the Vijigishu at any instant, any aspiring hegemon is surrounded by enemies. Because, and particularly, the natural neighbor, the immediate neighbor is the natural enemy. We are surrounded by two very pleasant countries, the epicenter of international terrorism, and a country which is nuclear armed and has been carrying out expansionism against us since at least 1962. So to mitigate the enemy, the only way forward is to rapidly accumulate power, to engage in armed neutrality, or in the extreme case, declare war. I will now move on to that bit. So in Kautilya, peace is the byproduct of hegemony. Hegemony fundamentally means peace on our terms. So how then to achieve hegemony? Kautilya makes a fundamental distinction between war and conflict. He says conflict and not war is the natural condition of a state. How? Basically, war is a last resort. States should declare war. Why? Because war is an enterprise of unpredictable outcomes. When the Ukraine war began, The Americans had been predicting that it will last maybe for 1 week, 1 month maximum. Today we have commemorated the 1-year anniversary of the Ukraine conflict. So just look how unpredictable things have become. Furthermore, war, what happens is when you declare war, it fundamentally creates insecurity in your neighbors. They become afraid fundamentally that they might be next. Look, take for example, the NATOization of Finland and Sweden. So what is the way forward? Covert warfare. Simple phrase. Kautilya lays explicit emphasis on the use of spies, espionage, triggering forest tribes against an enemy kingdom. The use of spies and espionage is varied. They can be used to assassinate top-ranking military officials and ministers, to honey trap. Female spies are to be used to honey trap the ministers and the military officers of a hostile state. Then spies are to be used to sow dissent in a hostile act. So the purpose, the benefit of covert warfare is to provide states the benefits of conquest without the chaos and unpredictability of open war. So peace is fundamentally a byproduct of hegemony. However, the pursuit of hegemony requires the disruption of peace. However, peace is achievable with hegemony, or basically the precondition of peace. Hegemony is achievable with the most minimal disruption of peace, which is the instrument of covert warfare. Now I will dovetail into how India's present neighborhood policy reflects this vision for acquiring peace on our terms, or regional hegemony, or which we call in our euphemistic foreign policy language as net security provider and preferred security partner. So India's neighborhood
to interrupt, you have like less than 2 minutes left, so you need to move slowly to conclusions. Sorry.
Yes, I am about to wrap up. So our neighborhood policy is basically two-pronged: economic and military. Sorry, security, not military. On the economic front, we have basically set up an economic organization by the name of BIMSTEC, the Bay of Bengal Initiative for Multisectoral Technical and Economic Cooperation. The purpose of this organization is firstly to exclude Pakistan from any economic partnership in the region, which we see as a sort of nagging, abscess in our underarm. So basically, to isolate Pakistan and to put up the impression to our neighbors that India's hegemony or India's rise, which we call euphemistically, during this rise, India will not assert its hegemonic position without at least considering the interests of our neighbors. This is the economic arm. And on the military arm, we have a policy of using covert action to support friendly forces in our neighborhood. Essentially, this is a strategy of combating Chinese expansionism. Basically, it's a smaller part of our larger policy of the necklace of diamonds, which is intended to counter China's string of pearls strategy. So we have been supporting friendly forces in countries like Sri Lanka in 2015 and 2018. We maintain the Bhutanese monarchy. We do not want it to go away. We do not want Hasina to go away from Bangladesh. We wanted KP Sharma Oli to go away from Nepal, and just by accident, he happened to go away. So in consequence, for India, peace at the expense of national interest is not worth having, because it means acquiescence of security interests either to Pakistan or to China. For that reason, India has adopted this policy, which is based on a combination of ancient wisdom and present pragmatism. With that, I will bring my presentation to a conclusion. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for great presentation on India's concept of peace and hegemony. I really enjoy all topics which being a scholar doing research on India, I really love hearing about India's input, India's heritage input to the study of IR. Here with peace, we can also benefit a lot from India's heritage to study development and sustainability, which is another interesting line of thought. Yet again, thanks for great presentation. Looking forward to seeing a full paper based on it. And yet again, sorry for interrupting. I hope that we will have opportunity to develop the issues raised in the Q&A session. And right now, we've already heard war in Ukraine mentioned numerous times. We will hear about it in next papers, but those will be already announced by my colleague and co-author, Dr. Anna Wrubel from the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies. Anna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers in Warsaw and in Calcutta for the invitation for this great students conference on a very important topic on peace and world politics. My task to do is to introduce the next two presentations, which will show us the perspective on peace and world politics or global international order from the Polish perspective and the Indian ones. So first, I would like to invite our student, Jan Gregorczyk, a student of the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies, University of Warsaw, to present his paper, Global Dynamics, the Change of Poland's Role in Peace and World Politics in the Context of the War in Ukraine. Jan, the floor is yours. 6 minutes for you.
Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I'm more than thankful for the opportunity to be here, and I would like to thank all of the people engaged in organizing the conference. Today, I will have the pleasure to present my work, Global Dynamics, the Change of Poland's Role in the Peace and World Politics in the Context of the War in Ukraine. And I have chosen this specific topic for a reason. Because in 2 days, it will be the anniversary of the Russian aggression on the independent and sovereign Ukraine. The behavior of Russia, who started the war, led to dramatic changes in the international sphere. Thus, the international situation has significantly changed since the beginning of the war. So being aware of those changes, there's a question of what role does Poland play in the international system right now? What has the role of Poland in world politics and the global security system increased? In my opinion, yes, and to a very far extent. Poland has become one of the key actors in the contemporary Western world and a probe of the global security system. And I believe that it is necessary to begin here with the historical background, as it will introduce everyone to the Polish vision on the ongoing situation. I would like to pay attention to what happened to Poland at the end of the 18th century when our sovereignty was taken in a conspiracy by Russia within the three partitions of Poland. As a consequence, since 1795 until the end of the Great War, Poland disappeared from the maps in the name of Russian imperialism. Then in 1939, Poland has been attacked by the USSR on the basis of the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact. We survived, but not as a truly sovereign state. In fact, we are fully dependent on the political command of Moscow until 1989. On the other hand, the territory of Ukraine became an integral part of the USSR after the World War II, despite their ambitions for independence. Ukraine was simply made a republic of the USSR, explicitly not sovereign and dependent on Moscow. Therefore, what is extremely important, we share a common historical experience, the experience of being dependent on Russia and being a subject of its imperialist ambitions. And our states know what dependency on Russia and these imperialist ambitions mean. And they mean full subordination, lack of democracy, lack of progress, repressions, and exploitation. And this is why Poland desires an independent and sovereign Ukraine. We know we know that it is not only a Ukrainian matter, but it is a global matter. Peace and security of the whole Europe, what historically meant the security of the whole world, depend on the result of the war. Apparently, the shape of the whole international system based on non-aggression and the right to self-governance is at stake. Hence, Poland is supporting Ukraine very clearly and very much since the beginning of the war. The Polish delegation was the last to visit Kiev before the start of the war and the first one to visit it right after it started. The President of Poland, Andrzej Duda, is one of the most engaged leaders, what has been admitted by Volodymyr Zelensky on various occasions. We were pioneers in providing serious help to the people of Ukraine and to the state itself. During the first days of the war, we provided tremendous humanitarian aid. We were sending mainly food, clothes, medicine, and it was an initiative of normal everyday citizens, not a governmental campaign. Moreover, Poland provided shelter for over 2 million Ukrainians escaping from the war. We were also very active in diplomacy. For instance, the Polish president started an initiative supporting Ukraine's fast-track accession to the European Union and has gained support from all of the Eastern European Union members. We also put pressure on states which hesitate with providing aid to Ukraine, such as Germany or Hungary, in order to speed up the process. These actions from the beginning of the war played a very important role in the mechanism of building Poland's position. They have boosted our reputation and soft power. They are also a fundament for further strength of our statements as they legitimize our claims and propositions. Therefore, they led Poland to establish its position as one of the leaders of the Western world in the context of the war in Ukraine, and definitely a position of a regional leader. Another crucial aspect is geopolitics. Poland is located in the heart of Europe, a place where the East and the West meet. And we also share borders with Russia, Ukraine, and Germany. We are also the biggest state in Central Eastern Europe when it comes to population, territory, and economy, and the border state of NATO and the European Union. These factors are crucial for determining Poland's position in the context of the war in Ukraine because they have strategic importance for security. Therefore, our defense capabilities are being constantly increased by NATO. We receive various forms of the most advanced equipment, such as Patriot missiles, and the presence of NATO soldiers on our soil increased as well. According to the words of Sławomir Dębski, the director of Polish Institute for International Affairs, NATO is changing its whole strategy from deterioration to making attacking possible by increasing self-defense capabilities, and Poland is a key element of this strategy. Moreover, we are increasing our military strength ourselves. We buy great amounts of military equipment, train our soldiers, and extend our army. Also, our ability to persuade other members of international organizations has increased. The so-called tank coalition formed by Poland is a great example when we successfully put pressure on Germany to send Leopard tanks to the Ukraine by convincing other states to send exactly the same tanks and other weapons themselves. Additionally, we are a key partner in transporting weapons to Ukraine as simply the most reliable and safe roads lead through our state, what boosts our position even more. I think that all of these facts are more than convincing that Poland's role in the international security system has increased. And last but not least, it is here in Warsaw where the most influential politician in the world, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, is right now. And it is not only him, but also leaders of the Bucharest Nine and the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg. Meetings of historical importance are going on right now in Poland, and they are being watched by the whole world. And the symbolism which stands behind all of these meetings is very significant. It simply demonstrates that the role of Poland has changed for the better, as we play a more important role in world politics and the global security system, which has been argued in my work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, for a great presentation, very comprehensive and excellent time discipline. Actually, as you have mentioned, the role of Poland, we can observe how the role of Poland in world peace and world order has changed during the last year. We can observe this actually on the daily basis, looking at the news in media following the visit of President Joe Biden in Poland currently, and actually we can watch the events also today as you have mentioned, we have this very important summit of Bucharest 9. Once again, congratulations for this great presentation and for showing us how important is Poland's role in the context of the war in Ukraine, not only in the talking about the military support, but also this great humanitarian action which we observed during the whole year after the war began. So now we will move to the Indian perspective of peace and world politics. I would like to invite Swapnil Biswas, I hope I pronounce your name correctly, student of Department of Political Science, Scottish Church College, and the topic of the presentation is realities of peace under the current world order and Indian perspective. The floor is yours, 6 minutes.
Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay.
So please present your presentation.
Thank you. You will find peace not by trying to escape your problems, but by confronting them courageously. You will find peace not in denial, but in victory. On this very note, a very good afternoon and very good morning to one and all present here. I'm Swapnil Biswas from the Department of Political Science, here to put up my short presentation on the topic realities of peace under the current world order, an Indian perspective. Now, as already explained wonderfully by my friends Sayantan and Naomi, that what are the different shades under which the framework of peace can be defined, I will take it up further from here and discuss about the Indian perspective on the particular issue. Now, if we see, peace is a very dicey concept to start with. Excuse me. The slide is not changing. I'm sorry for the technical issue. I'm really sorry, there is a technical issue. I'll just get back.
It says it's working.
Yeah, okay. So continuing from where I stopped, peace is a very dicey concept to begin with. It doesn't have a uniform explanation. The concept of peace often becomes a tussle between the idealistic metaphysical conceptualization, which is the positive definition of it, and the national interest oriented conceptualization, which is the negative definition of it. And history bears testimony to the fact that the latter has always taken an upper hand in the case of dealing with geopolitical and international relations related questions. Now, there's a new understanding of peace and security regime under the current world order. It has faced a paradigm shift from only considering military threats and as the promoter of chaos or promoter of war, and has gone much beyond it and considered things such as terrorism, insurgency, health epidemics, and even use unnatural or irrational use of natural resources as a source of creating chaos in the world. Now, we have to come to terms with this new world order and hence judge the global security environment based on this. Now, coming to the explanation of the current world order, for the ease of understanding, I have divided the global security environment with relation to India under 6 broad topics discussing the regions of the world. Firstly, we have the Indo-Pacific region. Now, India has important political, economic, commercial, and social interest in the Indo-Pacific area and has continued stake in the peace and stability of maintaining the peace and stability in the region. Coming to the West Asian region, which is known as the Middle East, it continues to face volatility and instability in the wake of the changes brought about by the Arab Spring. But India maintains strategic, economic, and defensive cooperation with the countries there due to the presence of nearly 7 million Indians in the region who live and work there. With regards to Africa, the growing nature of non-state actors in the region due to the prolonged unrest is a matter of concern for India, and so is the unchallenged intrusion of China into the region. With regards to Central Asia, India has gained interest on the area due to the salience of hydrocarbons and mineral resources which are found here. Europe is considered as a good source of economic, defense, and social cooperation for India, and a stable Europe is important for India. The most important region for India in its neighborhood is the Indian Ocean region, and it's very vital to India's security and prosperity positions. As a maritime nation by historical traditions and by its geophysical configuration and geopolitical circumstances, India is dependent on the oceans surrounding it. So maritime security obviously becomes a very important factor with when we are talking about the experimentations of India with peace. The reason behind me here today explaining the global security environment and its implication on India is to establish the fundamental fact that India's experimentation with peace will not depend on some lofty and heuristic parameters set out by the Western world. It will depend on the national interest of the state. India has been inherently a peace-loving and a peace-promoting country. We have always promoted the culture of peace at the international level, and we have maintained a non-interventionist policy, but not at the cost of our own national interest. This is the borderline where we come to a decision of what action India should take and will take. We have the meta-narrative of Gandhi when we are talking about India. And a very famous Sanskrit shloka is used with regards to Gandhi, which says, Ahimsa Paramo Dharma, which means that non-violence is the ultimate dharma or the ultimate situation where we need to reach. But the ones who use this shloka conveniently forgets the last part of it, which says, Dharma Himsa Tathaivacha, which says that in support to reach that position of that ideal situation, we need to exert violence if needed. And here India stands on its experimentation of peace. Now, maintaining the idealistic norms of peace is not a one-way road. India cannot do it alone. It's basically like saying clap using your one hand, which is practically impossible. So India's security environment is very complex, to say the least. For far too long, we have seen the Western world has wanted a peaceful and amicable solution to the Kashmir issue, while supplying arms and aid to the nation which promotes terrorism and uses terrorism as a weapon of proxy war over India. We have recently seen that some Western nations have considered Kashmir as the integral part of India only when Osama bin Laden was given shelter in that very country. So here comes the question that the peace will be accepted or peace will be standardized on whose terms? Who will decide the terms and the standardization of peace? So the question remains. A unilateral, we need to understand one simple thing here, that the lived experiences and the realities of the countries in the world are different. So is the conflicts faced by them. A unilateral standard opinion, if you're trying to push upon a particular conflict, it is a very ethnocentric view towards the particular issue at hand. India's continued strategic partnership with the Russian Federation has often been dubbed by the Western world as India being on the wrong side of the history, and also as an act of promotion of war. But voices don't stand up on similar regional issues like the Doklam standoff between India and China. Where does the moral high standing goes at that time? So here again comes a part of deciding terms upon your own national interest with regards to peace. Now, it's surprising at a different level that the only users of nuclear weapon in the world reprimanded and sanctioned a responsible state like India for possession of nuclear weapon, knowing the fact that both very friendly neighbors of India have already possessed one. So here comes again the question that why is the concept of peace with regards to deterrence by the United States not applicable for India in this context? Why is India reprimanded and sanctioned with the case of possessing nuclear weapons? So here comes the dilemma of understanding peace with regards to our own national interest and trying to push it under and trying to push the interest of your own country as under the veil of peaceful interventions or peaceful activities in the world. Now,
sorry to interrupt, but less than 1 minute left. So go to the conclusions.
Okay. So the fundamental question here is that India is an undeterred promoter and a supporter of peaceful, stable, and secure world, but it will do so under the pretext of realpolitik and not idealpolitik. So realpolitik is the key of deciding the actions of a country with regards to its experimentations of peace, and so has India done with regards to it. India's three primary concerns and the realities affecting her stances on the issues of with related to conflict and peace can be named as the issue with China and Pakistan, the territorial issues, the fight against global terrorism, of which India is a victim, and also the maintenance of maritime security in the Indian Ocean region. India's perspective over peace shouldn't be dubbed in any way as a supporter of conflicts and war, because India happens to be also the largest contributor to the topmost peacekeeping and peace-building force in the world, the Blue Helmets. India's commitment towards achieving a stable, secure, and peaceful world is undeterred, and it will be based on realpolitik, not idealpolitik. Thank you. I am finished.
Thank you so much for this excellent presentation and showing us the new perspective of India on the peace and world order, especially this important determinants of Indian policy in this field. You have mentioned the Indo-Pacific concept, so now I would like to pass the floor to our colleague from the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies of Warsaw University, Dr. Barbara Kratiuk, who is actually a project manager in the project co-founded by the European Union, Horizon Instant Strengthening Indo-Pacific Studies in Europe. Sorry, Barbara, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for these two excellent presentations.
Hello, everyone. So I would be very happy to kind of share this last part with the two remaining papers. I'm really looking forward to them. So I believe we have the first person that we have on schedule that is left is Miss Emilia Szostak, who is a student from our faculty at the University of Warsaw, with her presentation being Korean Peninsula Peace Initiative, an idea of reconciliation between the two Koreas under Moon Jae-in. Emilia, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see it clearly?
We can, yes.
Okay. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emilia Szostak. I'm more than honored to be here today and present my paper with you. Today, I want to present you with a case study of the Korean Peninsula Peace Initiative, which was the core point of the foreign policy of the former president of South Korea towards North Korea, and in my opinion, one of the most important initiatives towards the DPRK in modern history, considering constant nuclear threats and provocations from North Korean regime. undoubtedly, this issue is extremely important for actual residents of this region, but I believe it's also a crucial matter for other regions, considering economic potential and numerous partnerships within the Indo-Pacific countries. First, this is a short agenda, but I will skip it because we are short in time. First, I would like to go back in time to 2017, when the president elections happened in South Korea, and when Moon Jae-in presented his policy towards the North Korea. He advocated for peaceful resolution of North Korean nuclear issue through inter-Korean dialogue, economic partnerships, and increased people-to-people exchanges, including separated families meetings. In one of his interviews, he mentioned that he is keen of the idea of low-level federation between South Korea and North Korea, as the total unification is highly unlikely. And his policy has lots of resemblance toward the Sunshine Policy between 1998 and 2008. And many people even name it Sunshine Policy 2.0 or Moonshine Policy. So the main point was in July 2017 when he gave a speech in Berlin about the Korean Peninsula Peace Initiative. This initiative outlines policy directions towards North Korea, and it was supposed to be led by it's supposed to be a Korean-led process. So South Korea focused on building mutual trust and cooperation rather than unification by absorption or other ideas that would not be considered by North Korea as peaceful. So Moon Jae-in also included 4 no's to ensure North Korea that he do not want the regime to collapse, but he wants to work on denuclearization. And during this time, we have some crucial events. For example, 3 summits in April 2018, May, and September. So in general, 2018 is the most important time in this during all this initiative, as the 2 countries signed the Panmunjom Declaration, which was a significant step towards inter-Korean relations, and it was the first in over a decade that North Korean and South Korean leaders even met face-to-face. Then another crucial meeting was in June 2018, when Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un met in Singapore, and actually it was the first meeting between the US president and North Korean leader. And then also a visit of Moon Jae-in to North Korea, when he gave a speech in front of 150,000 North Koreans. This is part of his speech. I will just kindly skip it then. In June 2019, Trump and Kim Jong-un met again, but actually it was the end of those peaceful talks, as Trump declined North Korean demands of lift of economic sanctions. So unfortunately, the tensions rose again in 2019. However, the general recognition of importance of this action was rather good, as China's response towards the policy was positive. The EU approach was also positive, and the United States approach was also positive. However, the US did not want to lift any sanctions and maintain the maximum pressure policy. Overall, it's really difficult to say whether Moon Jae-in's policy towards North Korea has failed or not, as the situation on the Korean Peninsula remains complex and evolving. Undoubtedly, this policy of engagement with North Korea has had a significant impact on the security situation in East Asia, particularly on North Korean issue and the surrounding region. And also, President Moon's policy of engagement with North Korea has helped to reduce some tensions on the Korean peninsula and showed that under some circumstances, one minute, I see this. Under some circumstances, an improvement in relations with North is possible, and he marked some symbolic and historical moments of inter-Korean relations. After all, the long-term impact of President Moon's policy on the security situation in East Asian region remains to be seen, and will depend on variety of factors, including North Korea's future actions and South Korea's approach during Yoon Suk-yeol's presidency. So far, we can see that North Korea has continued to develop its nuclear missile capabilities, but we also can see that under some circumstances, a peace dialogue is actually possible, and it's and we should for sure consider the future peace talks, maybe in some different approach. But that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Emilia. And now to our last, but definitely not least speaker, Deepto Gangopadia. Please excuse me if I mangled the surname. From the Department of History of Scottish Church College, Buddhist Scriptures and their Propaganda of Peace. This is something that I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more about. Deepto, please, the floor is yours. There.
So good afternoon, everyone. And the topic I will be speaking on is the Buddhist scriptures and their propaganda of peace. So at first, I would like to tell that the religion philosophy known to the West as Buddhism is a number of adherents and range of teaching, one of the largest in the world. Born in India in the 6th century, it includes the most exalted philosophy yet achieved by man, a psychology from which the West is slowly beginning to learn, a religion which has satisfied untold millions for 2,500 years, a middle way of self-development to self-enlightenment, and a range and depth of spiritual science, mysticism, and religious art that cannot be found elsewhere. But today, the topic I will be actually speaking more on is how people have introduced the Buddhist peace in Indian circumstances. I won't be speaking much of the present, but more of the past. Rather than speaking of the modern nation states, I would be going on to the land of India 6 centuries before Christ. So to understand that from where Buddha came and from which land he belonged to, we have to understand how India was 6 centuries before Christ. If we see India back then, it had very many small, it was divided into many small states, and they would be always warring against each other. They had different sort of governments. Some were oligarchies, some were republics, not republic in the Western sense, but in a very Indian sense. And some were, the majority were monarchies. And Buddha himself came from a monarchical and republican background. And he himself had his own way of interpreting these forms of government. But Buddha never spoke in such that how a ideal political conditions should look like. Buddhist scriptures, in contrast, have talked a lot on polity. Not Buddha himself, but later interpreters have talked a lot on Buddhist principles. And now I would like to show that how the 3 great kings of India, Ajatashatru, and 3 centuries later of him, Ashoka, and a few centuries after him, Kanishka, have used this Buddhist philosophy as a propaganda for their own expansion, consolidation of power. So to understand first this concept of peace, we have to understand that how Buddhists are seeing peace. Buddhists tell that peace is basically based on the principle of Atma, and they also speak of the concept that nothing is permanent, the concept of impermanence, Anitya. So we have seen that these 2 concepts have given India a very different and spiritual look in the way of world.
While Western philosophy is thought to be an armchair contemplation, which has of Plato or of the others, which has given rise to the philosophical ideas, in India, it was more like a need for own self-resumption. So if we see how Buddha himself actually reached to his own philosophy, we see that he went out one day from his palace, saw scenes of suffering, renounced the world, and then sought enlightenment. The advantage of Buddhist philosophy, which I feel, is that its propagation of the concept of middle path. Buddhism tells that don't go towards extremities. For example, when Buddha was practicing his penances, he never gave up eating. At first he did until his bones protruded out of his skin, but then he accepted food. And and the old established order of penances, which meant that you can't even eat a morsel of food and sip a drink of water, is completely replaced. In fact, in political ideology too, Buddhism speaks in that way. If we see Ashoka, who is considered to be one of the greatest kings, we now start seeing that how Ashoka interpreted Buddhism into his own administrative structure. At first, we have to understand India was and actually is a place of multi-ethnical cultures and place. So India, the consolidation of India and the power of that how India will stay, that certainly doesn't only remains on the basis of how an emperor is maintaining his international relations. He has to also consolidate his empire within itself. And he found it in Buddhism. But Buddhism was not here only an instrument which was giving him the consolidation of power. It was also acting as a propaganda to save his face. So basically, Buddhist chronicle, always when they start painting about their rule, the great rulers of Buddhist history, they always speak about their pagan background, which was very harsh and brutal. For example, Ashoka or Kanishka, we see that these rulers were very brutal when they followed their own pagan religion, which was Hinduism. But soon afterwards, they fight some war. After fighting that war, they see the heaps of dead bodies, and then they soon think like I should now accept a religion of peace. But is this peace always actually not a propaganda to save his own face? So my idea is that while Indian have a good idea that Western peace has been used always as political diplomacy. And has been used very much for the consolidation of power. It's true for Indian rulers and Indian context too, that Indian rulers too have India peace. The concept of Indian peace might not have originated from armchair contemplation, but on later phases, we have seen rulers who have actually implied Buddhism and the concepts of peace in adhering to their own mixing power with the concept of piety. Thus, Buddhism.
1 more minute, okay?
Yeah, no, sure. Thus, to understand Buddhism and to understand how Buddhist scriptures have played a role, we have to see that how rulers are changing their voice. So if we see a Persian king's edict, he will say, I am the ruler of Persia, I am the ruler of the world, I am ruler of the whole peak, all those stuffs. But if we see the Indian ruler like Ashoka, we will see that he is telling Kahena Devanam Piya Piyadasi. So he's like that, thus says the beloved of God. He's bringing up benevolence with the concept of calling God. He's bringing in peace with divine orders, but he's also affirming his position by telling that since I am not only even though I am a divinely granted ruler, it doesn't mean I'm being autocratic, being call for peace, my men. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very interesting historical context into things that we should more be aware of. And now I will pass on the floor to Dr. Srimoi Guta Tartura, who is going to lead the question Q&A session. I would like to thank all of our speakers. I think can speak for all three of my colleagues and myself that this was very, very interesting for us as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barbara, and thank you to all your colleagues and all our colleagues from all the way from Poland for doing such a fantastic job in terms of time management in keeping the time as far as the presentations are concerned. And I congratulate all the speakers from both sides of the world. They were fantastic, and we really, really enjoyed each and every one of them. So a big round of applause to all of you and for all of you as well. Yes. Now let's move on to the question and answer session. We have a few students who are present with us. So if they wish to ask a question, I would ask them to come over here and ask them, or you can write in the chat box. But before I do that, I would now like to welcome Dr. Pradipta Rai from the Department of Political Science to conduct the question and answer session. Pradipta.
Thank you, Professor Guha Thakurta, for the opportunity to conduct this question answer session. And it's almost the last part of this seminar. So first we'll move on to the message box of Zoom, where I can find a question by Anna Robel to Jan Gregorzik. I'm sorry for the pronunciation. Which is Jan with us? So which words from yesterday's speech by President Joe Biden were most important in your opinion? Ja, please answer the question.
Okay, so it's a very good question for me, as I have attended the speech of President Biden in person yesterday. In my opinion, the most important message which was sent by President Biden during the speech was that Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. It was a very clear message sent directly to Vladimir Putin. I consider it to be so important because of the symbolic meaning of the situation which is currently going on. I mean, the visit of President Biden in Ukraine, in Kiev, which happened one day before. And it is an absolutely unprecedented situation because for the first time, the president of the US visited a state which is currently at war, in which American army is not directly engaged. So it has an extreme symbolic meaning. And also another thing which I consider very important are the words of President Biden when he said that that now Poland is the most important ally of the United States. There's like two quotations which I found the most important from the speech, which I really from which I was really happy about when I heard them live, and I consider them of crucial symbolic meaning for the whole situation, as the whole speech has an extreme symbolic meaning for the change of Poland's role in the context of the war in Ukraine, but also for the bilateral relations between Poland and the United States of America. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ja. Is there any other question in the chat box? Well, we have another question from here. Shondipon, please come on the dais and place your question. Please address the person whom you are asking your question.
Hello all. It's still afternoon here, so good afternoon to all of you. I would like to ask Jakub Witzak, I'm not sure if I pronounce your name correctly, and also Mr. Tomasz Lukaszuk. I feel that Poland's foreign policy is being influenced heavily by Western powers. Do you feel that the nation of Poland would benefit more from taking a more independent stance on issues such as the Russia-Ukraine crisis, such as India has, moving from a policy of looking towards the West for guidance and then moving towards sort of our policy of multi-alignment and realpolitik first? Secondly, do you feel that the United States, I ask you this as Polish people, I do not ask you this as sort of where your allegiances lie. But do you feel that the United States wants the Russia-Ukraine crisis to continue as it has accelerated its hegemonic power in the European sphere? My third question is this: do you, as Polish people, really think that the NATO is not an extension of American hegemony? These are my three questions. I hope I do not bore you. Thank you very much.
So these questions are addressed to me as well, because my speech concerned the Indo-Pacific architecture and territorial disputes, not the war in Ukraine. So I am not sure if I should answer, or was it a mistake?
Please, Shandipan, be specific to whom you are asking your question.
Yeah, because
I heard your speech on the Indo-Pacific region, and I felt that you were like, how do I put it? You were definitely against China, is what I completely identify with. But at the same time, I have my question was like, I did listen to your speech on the Indo-Pacific region. I wanted to know your perspective on the questions I asked. So
right,
like it's a very selfish thing for me to ask of you, because it's completely out of your this was not in your topic, but I did want to know your perspective on this. Thank you.
So when it comes to North
What I understand is it's an observation by Shandipan. It's Jan, it's your discretion how to address this question, or if at all to address. So it's up to you. It's not a specific question what I found from Shandipan.
So perhaps I'll just answer it briefly. So I think that North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO in short, plays a paramount role in the security architecture in Europe. And together with the European Union, though European Union, it is essential to underline, is not a military alliance in contrary to NATO. However, NATO, I wouldn't say it's an extension of the United States' hegemonic aspirations and ambitions. It's based on equal rights and equal obligations of every side. It's a multilateral alliance. And of course, we have to understand the fact that among the NATO countries, it is the United States that dispose of the most advanced technological and military capabilities. They have the largest army in the world, and their power projection capacity exceeds the capacity, such a capacity of every country, other country in NATO. However, I wouldn't agree with the point that NATO is an American tool to increase its hegemony in Europe.
Thank you, Jakub. There's another question from Swapnil Bishwas. Swapnil, please clarify to whom your question is. Okay, it's an open question to everyone that how far is the US responsible for the Ukrainian crisis? Question to Jan. Or question to Jan. I'm sorry for this pronunciation. I believe that this not being very comfortable to each other's pronunciation of the name is not a hindrance towards a mutual knowledge. So Jan, please answer.
Yeah, no problem. The pronunciation is fine. I'm okay with it. So how far is the US responsible for the Ukrainian crisis? Well, I would slightly change this question and ask whether if the United States are responsible for the Ukrainian crisis. Because, you know, the United States did actually nothing what provoked the Ukrainian crisis. It was Russia who invaded Ukraine. And these are the facts. So maybe it should be a question of how far the United States are engaged in the Ukrainian crisis, because how far they are responsible for it, in my opinion, they are not responsible for the crisis.
Thank you, Jan. Is there any other question from your side, from Poland? So I believe with this we can conclude this question answer session. I request Dr. Srimoy Gohothakurta to take over.
Thank you, Dr. Rai. It has been a wonderful afternoon for us, and I believe it has been a wonderful morning for all of you back in Poland. We've come to the end of our session, so a little bit of thank you to everyone involved. So I will now hand the mic over to the Accuracy Coordinator of Scottish Church College, Dr. Bhattacharya, to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Srimoy. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, a very good afternoon to you all. It is indeed a pleasure to accord the vote of thanks in such a gathering where you have young minds speaking over important issues. I would begin my vote of thanks by mentioning the name of Mr. Tomasz, former ambassador of Poland to India, for his introductory speech. The principal and vice principal of Scottish Church College for their address. My sincere thanks to the chairpersons of the session, Dr. Alexandra, Dr. Barbara, Dr. Anna, and Dr. Karim. Thank you very much for chairing the sessions. My deepest sense of gratitude to the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies, Warsaw University, for their wholehearted support and for collaborating with Scottish Church College. I would especially like to thank all the presenting students, and I think I should mention their names: Jakub, Greta, Jakub Wojciech, Jan, and Emilia from Warsaw University, and Sayantan, Mainak, Oyon, Swapnil, Amdipto from Scottish Church College. I think all of you deserve a round of special applause. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to put my special token of appreciation to Dr. Annapurna Sarkar, alumni of Scottish Church College, for instituting the endowment for the Anantakumar Sarkar and Snehulata Sarkar Memorial Students Conference on Peace. My sincere thanks to Department of History and Political Science for taking the initiative. A special mention of Dr. Srimoy Gohothakurta, Associate Professor, needs to be mentioned here. Thank you, Srimoy, for your hardworking job which you have been doing over a few months, and for conducting today's session so gracefully. Thank you very much. In the end, may I take the opportunity to thank all of you, all the guests, the faculty, the students from Warsaw University, as well as from Scottish Church College for your active participation. I hope we will be making Peace Conference every year as a compulsory program under this collaboration agreement that we have with Warsaw University. And I would like to propose that we of the things made by the students. Thank you. Thank you my colleagues back in Poland to ওরা নিজেরাই বন্ধ হয়ে গেছে
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. You are audible.
Yeah. I think with that note, we can conclude today's sessions. And I would like to thank all of you from University of Warsaw, Poland, as well as from Scottish Church College for your presentation, for your participation. Thank you, Mr. Thomas, for being with us today. Thanks to you all once again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.